The car sputtered, coughed, and finally gave up entirely, its engine wheezing into silence like an exhausted marathon runner. Alex cursed under his breath, gripping the steering wheel as if his frustration alone could will the machine back to life. But the dashboard lights blinked out one by one, leaving him sitting in darkness so complete that for a moment he thought he'd gone blind. Outside, the world was eerily still. No crickets chirped. No rustling wind stirred the sparse, leafless trees, just the thick, suffocating quiet of nowhere, the kind of nowhere that made you wonder if the map was lying, or if you'd accidentally slipped off the edge of reality. He leaned his head against the wheel, closing his eyes. Really, universe? This is how you do me? Break down in the middle of a horror movie set? Resigned to his predicament, Alex reached for his phone. Naturally, there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. He tossed it onto the passenger seat with a sigh and opened the car door, stepping into the chill night air. His breath misted in front of him, curling like smoke in the faint moonlight. That's when he saw it, a faint golden glow in the distance. It was coming from a house, a lone house, its windows warmly lit against the backdrop of shadowed hills and barren trees. Everything else around him was dead, lifeless, but that house radiated a kind of vitality. Alex hesitated. In every movie he'd ever seen, this was the part where the protagonist ignored every warning sign and walked straight into their doom. But what choice did he have? Stay in the car and freeze? Wait until some feral animal decided to investigate his scent? He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around him, and started toward the light. As he walked, his boots crunched on the gravel road, the sound loud enough to make him glance over his shoulder every few steps. It felt like the darkness was watching him, pressing in closer with every move he made. His nerves started to fray. Okay, he muttered to himself, forcing a laugh. It's just a house. Probably some sweet old couple who'll offer me hot cocoa and a phone charger. Nothing creepy at all about one lit-up house in the middle of nowhere. The humor helped. A little. The house grew clearer as he approached, a two-story structure with peeling paint and sagging shutters. It looked old but not abandoned. The windows glowed warmly, and faint shadows moved behind the curtains. Someone was home. Relief bubbled in Alex's chest. Then the front door opened. She stood there, framed in the doorway, her silhouette backlit by the golden light spilling out behind her. Alex froze. He couldn't make out her features at first, just the unnerving elegance of her posture and the way her long coat or dress, he couldn't tell which, seemed to flow around her as if it had a life of its own. "Good evening," she said, her voice smooth and rich, carrying a faint accent he couldn't place. It was the kind of voice that made you pay attention, whether you wanted to or not. Alex swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. Hi, my car broke down. I was hoping—" "I know," she interrupted, her tone cool and composed. "I've been expecting you." Expecting him? His stomach churned. Maybe coming here wasn't the best idea after all. He took a cautious step back, raising his hands. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'll just— Come in," she said, her crimson eyes gleaming in the darkness. Crimson eyes. Alex blinked. Surely he'd imagined that. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or maybe his brain was playing tricks on him because he'd been thinking too much about horror movies. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there staring at him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "Well?" she prompted, arching a perfectly shaped brow. Against his better judgment, Alex found himself stepping forward, his feet moving as if they were no longer his own. His mind screamed at him to stop, to turn around, to run back to the safety of his broken-down car and take his chances with hypothermia. But his body betrayed him. He climbed the creaking steps and crossed the threshold, the warmth of the house enveloping him like a cocoon. The door shut behind him with a soft click that sounded far too final. The interior was cozy, almost absurdly so. A crackling fireplace, overstuffed armchairs, and shelves crammed with books. It smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something metallic. "You'll forgive the theatrics," she said, stepping into the light. Alex stared. She was stunning. Tall and statuesque, with skin that seemed to shimmer faintly, like moonlight on water. Her hair cascaded down her back in a waterfall of silver, and her eyes, yes, they were crimson, sharp, and piercing, like rubies set in her flawless face. She looked like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. "Who are you?" he managed, his voice hoarse. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made you want to both run and stay forever. "I am Lysara of the Endless Twilight." "Okay, Lysara. Cool name," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm Alex, just Alex. No epic title. Thanks for letting me in, I guess. I just need to use your phone and—" "I don't have a phone," she said simply. Of course she didn't. Why would she? This whole night was one giant cosmic joke at his expense. He let out a nervous laugh. Right, because that would be too convenient. Lysara tilted her head, studying him. "You're amusing," she said. "Glad I can entertain," Alex muttered. She stepped closer, and he instinctively backed away until his heels hit the edge of a thick plush rug. Her gaze never left his, and for a moment he thought she might pounce on him. Instead, she gestured to one of the armchairs. "Sit," she said. There was no room for argument in her tone. Reluctantly, Alex obeyed, sinking into the chair and trying to look as nonchalant as possible. "So," he said, forcing a grin, "you always invite strange men into your house in the middle of the night, or am I just special?" Lysara chuckled softly, the sound surprisingly warm. "You are different." Alex wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. Probably both. He leaned back, trying to ignore the weight of her gaze. Whatever he'd gotten himself into, one thing was clear. This was no ordinary night, and Lysara was no ordinary woman. And yet, despite the unease prickling at the back of his neck, he couldn't help but wonder, what happens next? The armchair felt suspiciously comfortable. Too comfortable. It was like sinking into a marshmallow cloud, if that cloud had a faintly suspicious scent of lavender and something metallic. Alex shifted uneasily, trying to keep his guard up. Lysara, because of course her name was Lysara with all the dramatic flair of a villain from a space opera, was moving around the room with an eerie grace, her silver hair catching the warm light in ways that made her seem unreal. She stopped near a side table and lifted a glass decanter filled with a dark, syrupy liquid that shimmered faintly under the lamplight. Alex's stomach twisted as he considered his options. Run? No. The door was behind her. Fight? Unlikely. His best weapon was a half-dead phone and some bad jokes, neither of which would do much against a potentially murderous vampire alien. "So," Alex said, attempting casualness, "is this the part where you tell me I'll never leave, or do we ease into the existential horror?" Lysara paused, her lips twitching upward in a faint smile. "You have a sharp tongue for someone in a precarious situation." "What can I say?" Alex shrugged, trying to ignore the way her crimson eyes seemed to glint in amusement. "I figure if I'm doomed, I might as well go out being a smartass." She didn't answer immediately, instead pouring the liquid into a pair of ornate crystal glasses. "You're not doomed, Alex," she said, walking toward him with one of the glasses in hand. "Not yet." "Wow, that's comforting," he muttered, taking the glass she offered. He sniffed it cautiously. It smelled faintly sweet, like honey mixed with iron. He squinted up at her. "This isn't, blood, is it?" Lysara laughed, a low musical sound that somehow made his skin crawl and relax at the same time. "No," she said. "It's something far less dramatic, a blend of native fruits and minerals from your world. I've taken to mixing them myself. Try it." Alex hesitated but took a sip, more out of politeness than trust. The liquid was surprisingly good, thick and sweet, with an odd metallic tang that wasn't entirely unpleasant. "Okay," he admitted, lowering the glass. "Points for the drink. Still weird, though." Lysara settled into the chair opposite him, crossing her legs with a feline elegance. "I suppose I owe you some explanations," she said. "You think?" Alex gestured broadly at the room, then at her. You've got the mysterious glow, the whole "I've been expecting you" thing. And let's not forget the eyes. Explanations would be great, thanks. She studied him for a moment, as though deciding how much to reveal. I am not human, she said finally, her voice calm but carrying a weight that made the statement feel profound. Yeah, no kidding, Alex replied, earning another faint smile from her. So, what are you? Alien? Vampire? Some kind of weird combination? Lysara inclined her head slightly. A reasonable deduction. My species, your kind, might call us vampires, though that term is imprecise. We do not drink blood, nor do we share many of the superstitions your stories attribute to us. But we do require energy from living beings to survive. Energy? Alex repeated, frowning. Like life force? Exactly, she said, tapping her long fingers against the armrest. But not all of us take it by force. I use a device to extract ambient energy from plants and the environment. So what? You're a vegan vampire? Alex asked before he could stop himself. Lysara blinked, then let out a genuine laugh that caught him off guard. I suppose that is one way to put it, she said, her crimson eyes gleaming with amusement. Alex relaxed a fraction. If she could laugh at his dumb jokes, maybe she wasn't planning to eat him. Yet. Okay, so you're an energy-siphoning alien who's apparently gone green. How'd you end up here? Lost your spaceship? Her smile faded, and for the first time there was a flicker of something human in her expression. Something like sadness. I came through a portal, she said quietly. It malfunctioned during transit. I was separated from my people and stranded here. The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Alex leaned forward, his curiosity outweighing his caution. A portal? Like interdimensional travel? Yes, she said, her gaze distant. A technology far beyond anything your world has yet to conceive. But the mechanism was damaged in the crossing. I've tried to repair it, but the resources I require do not exist on this planet. Alex scratched the back of his head, processing her words. So you're stuck, and you've been, just hanging out in this creepy house waiting for someone to stumble across you? Not precisely, Lysara said, her voice sharp with defensiveness. I have been surviving, learning your language, your culture, your humor. She said the last word with a faint curl of her lips, as if she wasn't entirely convinced humor was worth the effort. Well, you're doing great so far, Alex said, raising his glass in mock toast. So what happens now? You just keep sipping on plants and reading books until someone invents a portal-fixing kit? Her gaze snapped to his, her eyes narrowing. You underestimate the gravity of my situation, she said. The longer I remain here, the weaker I become. This planet's energy is incompatible with my physiology. Eventually, I will wither. Oh, Alex said, his voice softening. He hadn't expected that. That sucks. Sorry, I didn't mean to. You needn't apologize, she interrupted, her tone softer now. It is simply the reality I face. For a moment, there was silence between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Alex fidgeted with his glass, feeling the weight of her words settle uncomfortably in his chest. Okay, he said finally, breaking the silence. What if I helped you? Lysara tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Helped me? How? I don't know, Alex admitted. I'm an engineer. I've got some experience with, fixing broken things. Maybe I could take a look at your portal thingy. Worst case scenario, I mess it up and we're right back where we started. Her crimson eyes bore into him, as though searching for any trace of deceit. Finally, she gave a slow nod. Very well, she said. If you are willing to assist me, I will not turn away your aid. Great, Alex said, setting his empty glass on the table. Let's call it even for the whole dragging me into your creepy house thing. Lysara arched a brow, her lips twitching in amusement. Creepy, is it? Perhaps I should redecorate. Start with fewer glowing drinks and ominous invitations, Alex said, grinning. Lysara chuckled, a sound that was almost human, and for the first time that night, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he wasn't entirely doomed after all. The basement was colder than Alex expected, the kind of cold that settled into your bones and made you think twice about breathing too hard. The dim, flickering bulbs overhead cast just enough light to make the shadows feel alive. Lysara descended the narrow staircase with a confidence that suggested she belonged in this eerie space. Alex, on the other hand, gripped the railing like it might disappear at any moment. "Nice place you've got here," he said, his voice bouncing awkwardly off the stone walls. "I'm guessing the home makeover shows don't get to this part of the galaxy?" Lysara glanced over her shoulder, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Is humor your default reaction to discomfort, or are you simply always like this?" "Little of column A, little of column B," Alex admitted, carefully navigating the final step. His boots hit the cement floor, and he took in the space around him. The basement was surprisingly large, with a ceiling high enough that it didn't feel claustrophobic. In the center of the room was a circular metal structure that immediately drew his attention. It looked like a cross between an oversized gyroscope and a piece of modern art, with interlocking rings and crystalline nodes that pulsed faintly with a dull blue light. The entire contraption was surrounded by wires, tools, and devices Alex didn't recognize but felt certain weren't from Earth. "Let me guess," he said, nodding toward the machine. "That's the portal?" Lysara stepped forward, her movements deliberate as she approached the structure. "This is what remains of it," she said. "It was once capable of bridging unimaginable distances, connecting worlds and dimensions. Now—" She reached out to touch one of the rings, and it flickered weakly. "It is a shadow of its former self." Alex whistled low. "Yeah, that definitely doesn't look like it's going to win any science fair prizes." "Do you always mock advanced alien technology?" she asked, arching a brow. "Only when it's broken," Alex shot back. Lysara's lips twitched in amusement, but she quickly turned serious again. "The damage is extensive. The energy matrix is unstable, and several key components were lost during transit. Without them, the portal is inert." Alex crouched down beside the machine, inspecting it more closely. "Okay, first of all, I have no idea what half those words mean, but second—" He tapped one of the crystalline nodes, earning a faint hum from the structure. "This looks like a power source. Is it still functional?" "Partially," Lysara said, crossing her arms. "But it cannot generate the levels of energy required to reopen the portal. I have tried everything within my means to repair it." "Everything?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "Because I'm seeing at least 3 duct tape opportunities here." Lysara stared at him blankly. "Kidding," he said, holding up his hands. "Mostly. Look, let's start with the basics. What kind of energy are we talking about here? Nuclear? Plasma? Some exotic alien version of Duracell batteries?" Lysara tilted her head, as though considering how best to translate her knowledge into something his primitive brain could comprehend. "The energy required is multidimensional in nature. It must harmonize with the quantum resonance of my homeworld while simultaneously bridging the dimensional rift created by the portal." Alex blinked. "Right. So, super fancy Duracell batteries." She sighed, though there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "If you insist on reducing it to absurdity, yes." "Great," Alex said, standing up and dusting off his hands. "Then all we need is a quantum resonance harmonic thingamajig. Should be easy enough to find at the local hardware store." "Your attempts at levity are noted," Lysara said dryly. Alex grinned. "You're welcome. Seriously, though, if we can't fix this thing, what's the next step? Is there like an intergalactic help desk you can call?" "Hi, I'm Lysara of the Endless Twilight, and my portal's on the fritz." "There is no help desk," she said, her tone flat. "And even if there were, I doubt they would dispatch assistance to this backwater planet." "Ouch," Alex said, clutching his chest in mock offense. Backwater? You wound me. Lysara ignored him, instead gesturing to a nearby workbench cluttered with tools and parts. If you truly wish to assist, you can begin by examining the secondary power couplings. They have proven temperamental. Temperamental, huh? Alex muttered, approaching the workbench. That's a fancy way of saying broken. He picked up a device that looked vaguely like a wrench, but had glowing lines etched along its surface. Okay, I'll bite. How do I use this thing? Lysara moved to stand beside him, her presence both commanding and oddly reassuring. She reached out, taking the tool from his hands. This is a phase stabilizer, she explained. It allows for precise adjustments to the crystalline nodes. Observe. She demonstrated, her movements fluid and confident as she adjusted one of the nodes on the portal. The blue light brightened slightly, emitting a soft hum. Cool, Alex said, genuinely impressed. Alien wrench. Got it. Lysara handed the tool back to him. Now you try. Alex hesitated. You sure about that? I mean, I'd hate to accidentally blow up your house. Lysara gave him a pointed look. If I did not believe you were capable, I would not ask. No pressure, Alex muttered, stepping up to the portal. He mimicked her earlier movements, adjusting one of the crystalline nodes with the stabilizer. To his surprise, the light grew steadier, and the hum became more consistent. Not bad, Lysara said, her voice carrying a hint of approval. Hey, I'm full of surprises, Alex said, grinning. Next thing you know, I'll be building my own portal. Let's focus on this one first, she said, though her tone was lighter than before. For the next hour, they worked side by side, Lysara explaining the intricacies of the portal's design, while Alex did his best to keep up. Despite the alien nature of the technology, he found himself oddly fascinated. It was like solving a puzzle, each piece revealing a new layer of complexity. At one point, Alex accidentally triggered a burst of static energy that sent his hair standing on end. Lysara didn't bother hiding her amusement. Yeah, laugh it up, Alex said, patting his now frizzled hair. At least I didn't turn into a pile of ash. You're surprisingly durable for a human, she said, still smiling. Thanks, Alex said, deadpan. I'll put that on my resume. By the time they paused for a break, Alex felt both exhausted and oddly exhilarated. The portal still wasn't functional, but for the first time, it felt like progress was possible. So, he said, leaning against the workbench, what's next? Do we order takeout and hope for a miracle? Lysara gave him a bemused look. If miracles were an option, I would not require your assistance. Fair point, Alex said, chuckling. Well, I guess we'll just have to science our way out of this one. Lysara tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. You are different, Alex. Yeah, I get that a lot, he said, grinning. For the first time since their strange encounter began, Alex felt a spark of camaraderie between them. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The morning sun streamed through the cracked windows of the house, painting the room in soft golden light. Alex blinked awake on the living room couch, momentarily disoriented by the faded floral wallpaper and the faint hum of alien technology emanating from below. He sat up, rubbing his face, and realized he still smelled faintly of ozone from last night's portal tinkering. I've officially slept in weirder places, he muttered, though the memory of that one hostel in Bolivia gave him pause. Lysara entered the room silently, as she always seemed to, her pale features catching the sunlight in a way that made her look almost serene. She held 2 mugs, one of which she extended toward him. Good morning, she said, her tone as calm and measured as ever. I've prepared a beverage I believe approximates your world's coffee. Alex accepted the mug with a skeptical glance. Approximates? Should I be worried? Only if you find molecular reconstruction alarming, she said with a faint smirk. Great, Alex said, sniffing the mug's contents. To his surprise, it smelled remarkably like coffee, rich and nutty with a hint of something floral. He took a cautious sip and raised his eyebrows. Okay, not bad. If this whole interdimensional portal thing doesn't work out, you could open a cafe. I will keep that in mind, Lysara said, settling into the armchair across from him. For a moment, they sipped their drinks in companionable silence. The quiet was almost comforting, but Alex's mind was already turning over the problems they'd been facing with the portal. So, he said, breaking the silence, what's the plan for today? More tinkering? Or do we start scavenging for parts? Because I'm pretty sure Home Depot doesn't stock multi-dimensional flux capacitors. Lysara set her mug down on the table with a deliberate motion. Scavenging may, in fact, be necessary, she said. Your planet lacks the advanced materials required for my technology, but I have identified potential substitutes. Substitutes? Alex leaned forward, intrigued. There are traces of highly conductive elements in your planet's discarded technology, Lysara explained. Devices you refer to as electronics, though primitive by my standards, contain components that could prove useful. Alex frowned. You're talking about old computers and stuff, like e-waste? Precisely, she said, her tone crisp. Your species has a habit of discarding valuable resources. It is inefficient. Hey, don't lump me in with the rest of humanity, Alex said, holding up his hands. I recycle, sort of. Lysara raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Instead, she stood gracefully and gestured toward the door. If you are ready, we should begin. Time is not a luxury I can afford. Right, Alex said, finishing his coffee in one gulp and grabbing his jacket. Let's go dumpster diving for the fate of the universe. The nearest scrapyard was about a 30-minute drive, which gave Alex plenty of time to bombard Lysara with questions. So, your people, he began, glancing at her as he navigated the dusty backroads. Do they all look, like you? Or is the whole ethereal vampire thing just your personal vibe? Lysara turned her head slowly, her crimson eyes narrowing. Ethereal vampire? Yeah, Alex said, grinning. You've got the whole ancient and mysterious aesthetic down. I'm just wondering if it's genetic or if you're like the cool aunt of your species. For a moment, Lysara said nothing, and Alex started to worry he'd offended her. But then, to his surprise, she let out a soft chuckle. My appearance is typical of my kind, she said, her tone light, though I have been told I possess a certain intensity. Understatement of the century, Alex muttered, earning himself a sideways glance. When they finally arrived at the scrapyard, Alex parked the car with a sigh of relief. The place was massive, a sprawling maze of rusted metal and forgotten machines baking under the midday sun. The air smelled faintly of oil and decay, with the occasional sharp tang of ozone. Welcome to humanity's grand repository of broken dreams, Alex said, gesturing at the scrapyard with a flourish. Feel free to browse. Lysara ignored his theatrics, her gaze scanning the heaps of discarded technology with a clinical precision. There, she said, pointing to a stack of old circuit boards and tangled wires. That pile contains materials we can use. Alex grabbed a pair of gloves from the trunk and handed them to her. You might want these, he said. Wouldn't want you slicing your hands on some rusty tin can. Lysara took the gloves with a raised eyebrow. I am more resilient than you seem to believe. Yeah, well, I'd still rather not explain to an alien doctor why you needed a tetanus shot, Alex said, pulling on his own gloves. They spent the next few hours sorting through the scrapyard, Alex cracking jokes while Lysara meticulously examined each piece of salvage. To his surprise, she seemed to tolerate his chatter, occasionally offering dry remarks that suggested she was starting to understand his sense of humor. At one point, Alex held up a particularly ancient-looking keyboard. Think this'll work? Lysara gave it a withering look. Unless your portal requires input from the 1980s, I doubt it. Fair enough, Alex said, tossing it aside. By mid-afternoon, they had gathered a small collection of potentially useful components: copper wiring, microchips, and a few pieces of what Lysara cryptically referred to as quantum-compatible alloys. Alex had no idea what that meant, but he wasn't about to argue. "Not bad for a day's work," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Maybe we should quit while we're ahead and open a thrift store." Lysara smirked faintly. "Your penchant for absurdity is remarkable." "Thanks," Alex said, grinning. "I try." Back at the house, they laid out their findings on the basement workbench. Lysara immediately began sorting through the pieces, her focus so intense that Alex felt a little out of place. "Anything I can do to help?" he asked, leaning against the wall. "Not at the moment," she said without looking up. "Cool, cool," Alex said, drumming his fingers on the table. "I'll just stand here and look pretty." Lysara glanced up, her expression unreadable. "You are adequate at that," she said, then returned to her work. For a moment, Alex wasn't sure if she was joking. Then he caught the faintest flicker of a smile and laughed. "You're getting better at this whole humor thing." "Do not let it go to your head," she said, but there was warmth in her tone. As the day turned into evening, Alex found himself marveling at how surreal his life had become. Just a few days ago, he'd been an ordinary guy with a boring job and a vague sense of dissatisfaction. Now he was working with a stranded alien vampire to rebuild an interdimensional portal. And somehow, it didn't feel crazy. "Well," he said, watching Lysara as she carefully calibrated one of the crystalline nodes. "Here's to saving the universe, one piece of scrap at a time." Lysara paused, glancing at him with an almost imperceptible softness in her gaze. "Indeed," she said, "one piece at a time." The portal's steady hum filled the basement, like the low growl of a distant storm, a sound that somehow felt alive. Alex crouched over the workbench, a soldering iron in one hand and a magnifying lens in the other. The heat was stifling, but he didn't dare complain, mostly because Lysara had just spent the last hour calibrating the quantum resonator by hand, which involved something that looked suspiciously like telekinesis. "So," Alex said, breaking the silence, "when this thing finally works, what happens? Big light show, epic wormhole, or is it more of a quiet pop and a friendly please step through sign?" Lysara, who was adjusting one of the crystalline nodes on the portal, didn't look up. "The activation sequence will generate a significant visual display," she said, "but I advise against standing too close. The energy discharge could be lethal." "Good to know," Alex said, moving a conspicuous half-step back from the portal. "I'll make sure to wear my flame-retardant pajamas when the time comes." Lysara glanced at him, her crimson eyes narrowing. "Do you ever take anything seriously?" "Of course," Alex said, feigning offense. "I take breakfast very seriously, and naps. Naps are sacred." A faint smile tugged at Lysara's lips, though she quickly hid it by turning back to the portal. "Your humor is perplexing." "Yeah, well, it's either that or panic," Alex said, his tone softening. "And I figured you'd prefer me cracking jokes over screaming into the void." Lysara didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "Panic would not serve us, nor would it serve you." There was something in her tone, a hint of weariness, maybe even vulnerability, that caught Alex off guard. For a moment, he considered asking her about it, but the thought of prying felt wrong. Instead, he picked up another piece of scrap metal and held it up like a trophy. "Found another candidate for the possibly useful pile," he said, his grin returning. Lysara gave him an almost imperceptible nod. "Set it aside. I will evaluate it later." By late afternoon, the air in the basement was thick with the scent of heated metal and ozone. They had made significant progress, at least according to Lysara. To Alex, most of it still looked like a collection of glowing rings and indecipherable wires. "Okay," Alex said, stretching his arms above his head. "Time for a quick status check. On a scale of 1 to, we're totally doomed, how's the portal looking?" Lysara tilted her head thoughtfully. "We are progressing. The structural integrity of the energy matrix has stabilized, and the resonance harmonics are approaching the required frequency." Alex blinked. I understood like 3 of those words. I'll take that as a good sign. It means we are closer to success, Lysara clarified, her tone patient. But there is still much to do. Gotcha, Alex said. So, cautiously optimistic? Lysara arched an eyebrow. I do not indulge in optimism. Clearly, Alex said with a grin. Before Lysara could respond, a sudden crackle of static filled the room. Alex froze, his eyes darting toward the portal. The crystalline nodes were flickering erratically, their blue light shifting to an unsettling shade of green. Is it supposed to do that? Alex asked, taking an instinctive step back. Lysara moved quickly, her movements sharp and precise as she examined the control panel. No, she said, her voice tense. The energy readings are spiking beyond acceptable parameters. Cool, Alex said, his heart racing. So what do we do? Hit it with a hammer, unplug it and plug it back in? Lysara shot him a withering look. Do not touch anything. Noted, Alex said, holding up his hands. Touch nothing. Got it. Lysara's fingers danced over the controls, her expression focused. The flickering light intensified, and the hum of the portal grew louder, rising to an almost deafening pitch. Lysara, Alex said, his voice rising. Whatever you're doing, maybe do it faster. I am aware of the urgency, she snapped, her tone uncharacteristically sharp. The portal emitted a sudden pulse of energy, and Alex felt the air around him ripple like a heat wave. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over a toolbox. Is this the part where we run? He asked, his voice half joking, half panicked. Before Lysara could answer, the portal let out a low, resonant tone that vibrated in Alex's chest. The flickering light steadied, shifting back to its original blue hue. The hum subsided, leaving the basement eerily quiet. Lysara straightened, her expression unreadable. The anomaly has been neutralized, she said. Great, Alex said, exhaling sharply. For a second there I thought we were about to get sucked into an interdimensional black hole. Lysara turned to him, her lips curving into the faintest hint of a smile. Your imagination is dramatic. Hey, I'm just saying, you can't blame me for assuming the worst, Alex said, brushing off his jeans. I've seen enough sci-fi movies to know how these things usually go. Lysara's smile faded, replaced by her usual calm demeanor. The situation was under control, she said. However, this incident highlights the instability of the portal's current configuration. We must address these issues before proceeding further. Fine by me, Alex said, still catching his breath. But maybe next time let's try not to almost blow up the basement? Later that evening, Alex and Lysara sat in the living room, sharing a rare moment of calm. Alex had insisted on taking a break, arguing that even intergalactic emergencies deserved a coffee break. You know, Alex said, swirling the remnants of his coffee in his mug, I've been thinking. Should I be concerned? Lysara asked dryly. Ha, Alex said, rolling his eyes. No, seriously. You've been stuck here for how long? Weeks? Months? Lysara's gaze grew distant. Months, she said quietly, though it feels longer. And in all that time, you've been trying to fix this portal by yourself, Alex said. No wonder you're all business. You probably forgot how to relax. Relaxation is not a priority, Lysara said, her tone clipped. Yeah, well, it should be, Alex said. Trust me, you'll be way more effective at saving the universe if you take a little time to recharge. Lysara arched an eyebrow. Is this another one of your Earth philosophies? Something like that, Alex said, grinning. To his surprise, Lysara didn't argue. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, her expression softening just slightly. For a moment, she almost looked at peace. Alex raised his mug in a mock toast. Here's to saving the universe, one coffee break at a time. Lysara regarded him with a faint smile. One coffee break at a time, she echoed, her voice carrying the barest hint of warmth. As the evening stretched on, The portal's hum remained steady, a quiet reminder of the challenges ahead. But for now, Alex and Lysara allowed themselves this brief respite, two unlikely companions, in a world that suddenly felt just a little less lonely. The basement had become their war room. Wires spilled out of the portal's frame like the guts of some mechanical beast, glowing faintly in the dim light. The crystalline nodes pulsed in sync with a low, rhythmic hum that seemed to set the entire room vibrating. Alex crouched over the workbench, a tangle of circuit boards spread out before him. A small notebook filled with his scribbled sketches and half-baked theories lay open at his side. Lysara stood nearby, her posture as rigid and precise as ever, her crimson eyes scanning the latest readout from the portal's control panel. "Okay," Alex said, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his temples. "Here's a question for you. How do your people usually fix these things? I mean, do you have a cosmic IT department, a universal repair hotline? Because I feel like we're missing a tech support guy who can just say, 'Have you tried turning it off and on again?'" Lysara tilted her head, considering his question with her usual intensity. "Portal maintenance is the responsibility of specialized engineers," she said. "However, the resources required for such repairs are not readily available on your planet." "Figures," Alex muttered. "So what you're saying is we're doing the interdimensional equivalent of fixing a spaceship with duct tape and chewing gum." "An apt analogy," Lysara said, a faint trace of amusement flickering across her face. Alex chuckled and grabbed a stray wire, gesturing dramatically with it. "MacGyvering our way across the galaxy. I like it. But let's just hope we don't accidentally blow ourselves up in the process." Lysara arched an elegant eyebrow. "If you are concerned about safety, perhaps you should focus on the task at hand, rather than making light of the situation." "Light is how I cope," Alex said, mock serious. "You're the brains, I'm the comic relief. It's a classic duo." As the day wore on, they continued their work, each playing to their strengths. Lysara handled the intricate calibrations and adjustments to the portal's energy matrix, her movements as precise as a surgeon's. Alex, meanwhile, took on the role of scavenger and jury rigger, scouring the basement, and occasionally the rest of the house, for anything that might serve as a makeshift component. At one point, Alex returned from the upstairs hallway triumphantly holding a dusty box, labeled Christmas lights. "Found these in the attic," he said, setting the box on the workbench. "Think we can use them?" Lysara gave the box a skeptical look. "Their utility is questionable." "Questionable, maybe," Alex said, pulling out a tangled strand of multicolored lights. "But look how festive the portal would be. We're talking serious pizzazz here." To his surprise, Lysara's lips twitched, as if she were suppressing a smile. "If aesthetics become a factor in portal construction, I will let you know." "Good," Alex said, draping the lights over his shoulders like a glowing scarf. "Because I've got ideas." By evening, they had made significant progress, or at least that's what Lysara assured him. To Alex, most of their work still looked like an elaborate game of don't touch the wrong wire or you'll end up in the Stone Age. He set down a screwdriver and stretched, his back cracking audibly. "Okay, I'm calling it. We've earned ourselves another coffee break, maybe even pizza this time. Do aliens eat pizza?" Lysara glanced at him from across the room, her expression unreadable. "I have not consumed pizza, but I am familiar with the concept. It seems inefficient." "In what universe is pizza inefficient?" Alex asked, genuinely appalled. "In this one," Lysara said, her tone as matter-of-fact as ever. "Its nutritional value is disproportionate to its energy expenditure during digestion." Alex stared at her, then shook his head in mock dismay. "Wow. You've been on Earth for months, and you haven't tried pizza. That's a tragedy." "Your definition of tragedy is peculiar," Lysara said dryly. "You don't know what you're missing," Alex insisted. "We're getting pizza. End of discussion." Half an hour later, they sat at the kitchen table, a large pepperoni pizza between them. Alex watched with barely concealed amusement as Lysara examined her slice like it was a newly discovered alien artifact. "Just eat it," he said, taking a bite of his own slice. "I promise it won't bite back." Lysara gave him a skeptical look, but took a cautious bite. Her expression didn't change, but Alex thought he saw the faintest flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Well?" he prompted. "It is acceptable," Lysara said after a moment. "Acceptable?" Alex repeated, feigning offense. "That's it? This is Earth's greatest culinary achievement, and you're giving it a participation trophy?" "It is overly greasy and structurally unstable," Lysara said, holding up her slice as if to demonstrate. Alex laughed, nearly choking on his pizza. "You're impossible," he said, shaking his head. After their makeshift dinner, they returned to the basement to resume their work. The portal was beginning to take shape, its frame glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Alex couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement and apprehension. "So," he said, tightening a bolt on one of the supports, "what happens when this thing actually works? Do you just step through and wave goodbye? Or do I get a postcard from wherever you end up?" Lysara hesitated, her hands stilling over the control panel. For a moment she didn't speak, and Alex realized he'd hit on something deeper than he'd intended. "I do not know," she said quietly. "My return is uncertain. The portal may not connect to my homeworld. It may not connect to anywhere." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. Alex set down his tools and turned to face her. "Hey," he said gently, "we'll figure it out. And if this thing doesn't work, well, we'll try something else. That's what humans do. We're annoyingly persistent." Lysara met his gaze, her crimson eyes softer than he'd ever seen them. "You are unusual," she said. "I'll take that as a compliment," Alex said with a grin. As the night wore on, they continued working side by side, the portal's hum growing stronger and steadier with each passing hour. Despite the challenges and uncertainties, there was a strange sense of camaraderie between them, a bond forged through shared determination and, perhaps, a hint of mutual admiration. For the first time in what felt like forever, Alex found himself looking forward to what the future might bring, even if it involved an interdimensional portal that could potentially rewrite the laws of physics. Because somehow, in the middle of this absurd and extraordinary situation, he'd found something he hadn't realized he was missing, a sense of purpose, and maybe, just maybe, a friend. The portal stood at the center of the basement, fully assembled and vibrating with an energy that seemed to pulse in time with Alex's heartbeat. It was beautiful in its own way. The crystalline nodes shone like captured starlight, and the concentric rings of the frame shimmered with a faint, iridescent glow. For all the jokes Alex had made along the way, he couldn't help but feel a pang of awe as he stared at it. Lysara, standing at the control panel, was equally composed and uncharacteristically silent. Her usual sharp efficiency seemed tempered by an almost reverent stillness. "So," Alex said, breaking the silence, "this is it, huh? The big finale. No pressure or anything." Lysara didn't look up, but a faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "It is indeed a significant moment." "Significant? That's all you've got?" Alex said, grinning. "Come on, Lysara. This is the part where you say something dramatic, like, 'At last I shall return to my people and fulfill my destiny.'" Lysara raised an eyebrow. "Do you believe that would improve the situation?" "Definitely," Alex said, nodding solemnly. "A little melodrama goes a long way." Lysara shook her head, but there was warmth in her expression. The activation sequence was complex, requiring both of them to work in sync. Alex's role, as usual, was to follow Lysara's precise instructions without getting too distracted by the flashing lights and ominous sounds. "Input the frequency modulation into the secondary relay," Lysara said, her voice calm and measured. Frequency modulation, secondary relay, Alex repeated, flipping a series of switches. Got it. And just to be clear, which one's the secondary relay again? Lysara shot him a look that could have melted steel. Relax, I'm kidding, Alex said quickly, adjusting the correct controls. See? I'm learning. I am unsure if I should feel relieved or concerned, Lysara said dryly. As they worked, the portal's hum grew louder, filling the room with an almost tangible vibration. The light emanating from the frame grew brighter, casting strange flickering shadows on the walls. Okay, Alex said, stepping back and wiping his hands on his jeans. That should do it, right? Lysara nodded, her crimson eyes fixed on the portal. The sequence is complete. It is ready. There was a long pause as they both stared at the shimmering gateway, the air between them heavy with unspoken questions. So, what happens now? Alex asked, breaking the silence. Lysara's expression softened, and for the first time, she seemed hesitant. I step through, she said quietly, and if the portal is stable, I will be transported to my intended destination. And if it's not stable? Alex asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Then I will be transported elsewhere, Lysara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex frowned. That's a pretty big gamble. It is a risk I must take, Lysara said, her gaze steady. I cannot remain here indefinitely. This is my only chance. Alex opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself. He knew she was right. As much as he wanted to crack a joke or find some way to lighten the moment, he couldn't shake the weight of what this meant. Well, he said finally, forcing a grin, you'd better come back and visit sometime. Bring me a souvenir or something. Lysara's lips curved into a faint smile. I will endeavor to do so. And the moment of departure was bittersweet. As Lysara stepped toward the portal, Alex felt an unexpected lump in his throat. He hadn't realized how much he'd come to rely on her presence, their strange, symbiotic partnership that had somehow become a friendship. Hey, Lysara, he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. Thanks, for everything. Lysara turned to him, her crimson eyes soft with something he couldn't quite place. It is I who should thank you, she said. Your assistance has been invaluable. Yeah, well, don't forget it, Alex said, managing a crooked smile. Lysara gave him one last nod before stepping into the portal. The light flared brightly, forcing Alex to shield his eyes. When it faded, she was gone, and the basement was eerily silent. The weeks that followed were strange. Without Lysara, the house felt empty in a way Alex hadn't expected. He went back to his usual routine, sort of, but everything seemed a little duller, a little less significant. But things had changed. He had changed. One night, as he sat on the porch staring up at the stars, he found himself smiling. He didn't know if Lysara had made it back to her homeworld or if she was somewhere else entirely, but he liked to think she was okay. And as much as he missed her, he also felt hopeful. Because if there was one thing he'd learned from their time together, it was that the universe was vast and unpredictable, full of possibilities he'd never even dreamed of. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of their story. A faint, shimmering light flickered in the basement late one night. Alex, half asleep on the couch, woke to the sound of something humming faintly. He stumbled downstairs, his heart racing. There, in the center of the basement, the portal was glowing softly, and standing in front of it, silhouetted by the light, was a familiar figure. Miss me? Lysara said, her voice calm but tinged with something that might have been amusement. Alex stared at her, then broke into a wide grin. About time, he said. You wouldn't believe how boring things are without you. Lysara arched an eyebrow. Then it is fortunate I have returned. Fortunate for both of us, Alex said, stepping forward. As the portal's light bathed the room, Alex felt that same sense of awe and excitement he'd felt the first time they'd activated it. The universe, it seemed, still had plenty of surprises in store.